So stakeholders are now looking for quicker automation times, quicker automated testing. They're looking for software development cycles and continuous builds much quicker. It's a very fast changing world out there, and especially for the software development industry. And today I think we saw a coming together of like-minded people who have lots of different approaches and lots of different trade secrets to how we need to do this and to do it well. So ITAG are looking forward to 2016, and most importantly we got to see today that there's a very strong and vibrant community of software development here in Galway.
So today I covered what we might call a question of craftsmanship, and that is to explore what is meant by the idea of craft in software development. What do we mean by this term? Because there's a lot of ways of looking at software development. We can look at it as engineering, we can look at it as mathematics, architecture, science and art. And there was a bit of fun. I explored a bit of the art side of it, in the sense that a good code can be artistic and actually visually has a lot of sides to it. So there's a kind of a fun in terms of how you organise the appearance of something. It's not merely instructing a computer, you're actually trying to explain to somebody, but in a formal language. You're trying to explain to somebody how this fits together. In fact, to put it another way, you're trying to explain your thinking. It's a way of organising your thoughts using a particular notation, and to that we can actually see that they're clearly a craft, in the sense there's many ways of doing it, and there's a way that is satisfying but demands skill. And so it was sort of exploring that idea of it. Then the other side of it is when we look at the idea of craft, we look at things being dependable, and there is this contrast to something that's sort of ad hoc and random. So we're looking at something that is, I guess, well crafted. We use the word well crafted. So there's that idea that it is well crafted. What does that mean? That things don't crash, that you don't end up with error messages that become these big public displays. You don't end up with rockets blowing up. That was one of the examples I used. So there's this idea of well crafted, meaning something you can depend upon. But at the same time, sometimes people look at craft as being in opposition to engineering, science, and all these other approaches to thinking. And I try to marry this together, because a good engineer tends to find their work is in one part built on science, but is in another part also, firmly in the world of craft. There is an aesthetic judgment. It's just not just mechanism. And I sort of inspired by the quote that the Institution of Structural Engineers use about themselves. And they regard what they do, they regard their discipline as the art and science of creating structures. With economy and elegance, they bring all of these different concerns together in one. So rather than treat the craft view of software development as being in opposition to stuff, it actually embraces them, it brings them all together. So that's the essence of what I was talking about, and to say that this tradition reaches back many decades, and there's sort of an enjoyment and a fun to that perhaps we don't see if we only break it down to just one cold aspect. So the conference today has been an absolute delight to come back to Galway. It's been a few years since I've been here, so it's a really nice event. There's a lot of build up to it in the sense of how it was organised, and I was involved in that. And So it's nice to go to a single track conference because everybody's very, very involved. What's nice about that is everybody's heard the same thing. They've been to the same sessions as you. And sometimes a conference is great because you can't make up your mind, but sometimes a single track conference focuses it. And so each speaker can build upon the discussions of the previous speaker, and then you've got something to talk about in the breaks that is consistent. Everybody's seeing the same thing. You can find the things you disagree with, you can find the things you agree with, and so there's a really good vibe in that sense. In fact, it's been really well attended. But also, I think the way the weather was planned, so that it was absolutely chucking it down outside, made sure everybody wanted to stay inside, and you've got to admire the skill in planning on that one. So yeah, that's a far better way of spending a Friday than most people in most companies end up doing. So yeah, it's really enjoyable.
Brilliant. One thing that you would change or add to the conference for next year?
Oh, I can never do one. It's going to have to be two or three. Much as I like the weather keeping us indoors, I know it's outside control, but it'd be really nice if it were nice. Okay, so that's not something you can necessarily change. Panel debate was great. All the sessions in the morning following on from each other, I think that was absolutely brilliant. I think the only potential variation would be actually to add more stuff, and that might mean breaking the single track and going multi-track, but then kind of reconverging, sort of have sort of keynote and together sessions, but actually fork, and so you have maybe 3 parallel sessions, allowing people perhaps a little more diversity, but still enough commonly attended sessions to get everybody talking the same thing and working off the same narrative.
Okay, so today I spoke about software architecture and an approach on, what I think is an approach to actually create an architecture that makes sense. Somehow software architecture in many circles has nowadays not such a good reputation for various reasons, typically because there are the kind of architects, typical enterprise architects, whatever they think they can do, big designs, things like this, and then leave the developers to do the implementation details, stuff like this, which doesn't really work. So what I proposed was an incremental approach to it. It's not my invention, it's something, my talk is based on my experience and on the experience of other people doing this. And I hope I demonstrate a rationale for that. Basically, as humans, we are feedback machines. We are unable to see the future. Therefore, when we do these kind of things, we need to do a bit, get the feedback, and do a bit more. Maybe improve, change direction, or maybe continue what we are doing. So, yeah, this is what my talk was about.
And for the conference itself, what's the one thing that you really liked about the day, and what's the one thing that you would change?
I like the conference actually quite a lot. Perhaps also because since I'm Italian, I like to talk a lot. The fact that I was involved in my own talk and in the panel and things, I enjoyed it very much. I liked all the talks actually. I think I learned quite a bit. I think in terms of what to change, probably what already John Jagger and John Maguire said, probably the audio a bit better, and also, if this conference picks up, probably there will be a need of a bigger environment, bigger venue. For anything else, I think it was pretty good.
Okay, so today I've been talking about the rationale for continuous delivery, and continuous delivery is so I think software development is a solved problem, but it's really hard to do. And so I've been talking about the approaches and the use of establishing feedback loops and using automation to help us solve that problem. I've also been speaking on a panel and answering questions from the audience, which was an awful lot of fun. Had some good questions and some interesting discussions, and some good banter between the panelists, I think.
Yeah, for sure. There's a good set of questions there.
Yeah.
There's a good bit of competition for everybody to have the final say.
But we're all people that talk for a living, so we're competing with one another.
And what did you think of the overall conference experience?
The overall conference has been an awful lot of fun, so it's been very good. So I like Ireland anyway, but it's been interesting meeting people, talking about people from the high-tech sector, and understanding that probably have similar problems to everywhere else, but it's been great, and the conference has been interesting. I thought this morning's sessions have been really good. We've all kind of been reinforcing one another and saying very similar ways from very similar things from different angles.
Yes.
But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, there's been that continuity throughout the
Yes.
morning. And
Yeah.
I think it's flowing into the afternoon with the
Yeah.
panel debate. I suppose where, just to summarise your views, where is the right place to start for people who are in the difficult places of waterfall or not in a continuous delivery mode? People who are maybe in 6-12 months delivery cycles, and we're looking to push down into a neater 1 month, 2 weeks, 1 week.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of a difficult question to answer because it depends on the organisation. But there are a few common places where people can start. I think one thing that's worth saying is that you don't have to do it all before it's valuable. That each step along the way improves your situation, and so you get an incremental improvement in the way in which you work by adopting some of these practices. I think the two common starting places are the kind of continuous integration, so establishing an automated build and start adopting automated testing as part of your strategy. And then the other common place to start is to think in terms of the cycle time. So think about measuring how long it takes you to get from idea to software in the hands of users, measuring that, do a breakdown of where how much each step costs, and then figure out which are the ones that you can optimize, which ones you can shorten. Some of those will be human processes, some of them will be mechanical ones that you can automate.
And where do we go to either get help from you or bounce questions off you or just the general contact list?
So I'm on Twitter at DaveFarley77. You can tweet me and ask me questions. I also have a website called www.continuous-delivery.co.uk, which kind of talks about some of my consultancy services and training courses and stuff, and there's stuff on there. But people are free to drop me a line, and if I've got time, I'll answer questions and stuff online. But
and in terms of a bit of feedback for the conference organisers, is there 1, 2 or 3 things that you do different for next year?
I don't think so. I think it's been a good conference. I think being hypercritical of the sound at the back of the room was a little bit woolly. But apart from that, I thought it's been a very good conference. I thought the quality of the talks was interesting. I thought mostly my impression was that the audience were very engaged and interesting. I've had some interesting conversations between sessions. I suppose that's one thing, maybe slightly more gaps to allow people to mingle a bit more between sessions perhaps, and maybe if you had a multi-track event that would be easier to do.
So I guess my talk today was really a talk in 2 parts. The first part was just a summary of the tool that I've built, which is called Cyber Dojo, that allows you to practice doing test-driven development without having to leave your browser. So I explained that tool and the history behind it and the 30,000 or so sessions that people have done on that in various languages. A little bit of explanation about the technology behind it as well. And that led into a little section where I gathered some data. I looked at a random sample of 500 of the 30,000 cyber dojos, which are just practice sessions. A dojo simply means the word that Japanese people use for practicing their martial art. The dojo is literally the place where they practice their martial art. So I took a random sample of 500 and I presented some interesting statistics on those. And from that, I was able to actually show both examples of the way people practice or try and practice doing test-driven development, both at the overall level by showing a statistical summary, but also individual fragments of code that people have anonymously coded, because the way Cyber Dojo is built is that you don't know who does what. And so I was able to show examples of how people have written the code at the start, And then after we'd been through a bit of training, I was able to show the improved way that they'd used the tool to get really much better test-driven development. So it wasn't just showing how not to do it, there was a very definite focus on the progression in how to do it with concrete examples that people had actually written. And finished off with sort of a summary of almost the philosophy of TDD relating to how the code and the tests alternate and comparing, for example, the idea of doing all your tests at the end, which aren't really tests, they're often debugging, as opposed to putting your tests at the beginning as specifications of what you do want. And that's pretty much it. After that, I ran out of time by 20 seconds.
Very good. And how did you enjoy the day? What did you think of the other speakers, the lineup, and what's the one good thing, the one thing you change about the conference for next year?
I liked it a lot, thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll make a point of coming back next year even if I'm not invited as a speaker. In terms of one good and one bad, I have to say I think the last talk about game golf was just fantastic, utterly inspiring. So I thought if I had to pick a highlight, I'd pick that. And if I had to pick one thing to improve, I would probably just go with the audio. It could have been slightly better at certain times. So I was okay when I sat at the front, but for one of the sessions I was sat further at the back and it was noticeable that the audio quality wasn't quite as good at the back. That's all.
Active Mind Technology is a company that started in the Innovation and Business Centre in GMIT that has since moved its headquarters to San Francisco. We now have 4 office locations: San Francisco, Santa Clara. Our mobile development team is here in GMIT and a really important part of the business, and we have our inside sales team in Florida. The company is all about, its vision is to basically own the relationship that exists between humans and their sports data. Because we believe that the next great network is going to come from sport. Right now our first product is Game Golf. We've built the Game brand and the first product underneath that brand is Game Golf. We went to market in February of 2014. We went into retail in April, into the Apple stores May. We went into Golf Specialty. And by the end of 2014 we had just under 200,000 rounds of golf uploaded to our platform. It had been used in over 17,500 courses in 100 countries worldwide, and I think that's significant because we only support 2 countries. So the fact that it has got that sort of widespread adoption, it means that there is a hunger from the industry for this type of data, for quantified data that is brought to life through compelling stories where you can see the data, where you can share it, and where you can compete and compare with that data set. From an entrepreneur's journey point of view, what I talked about really was, I think the core message is belief. If you don't believe in what you're doing, the journey is just too difficult, and you're just not going to get it there. And even with belief, it's still very, very difficult. So, being able to manage your emotions, being able to manage your thoughts, manage your feelings is a huge part of the process because there's so many ups and downs. However, if you can do that, or if you find some way to release the stress and you can continue and keep persisting, then I believe it doesn't matter what the idea is. It's all about just persisting, executing, because you'll pivot to something different. You'll try some unique new angle. And that's kind of my thought process. I'm very lucky though because I have a wife who understands and really allows some of the stuff that I do. For example, joining her on the 2nd week of our honeymoon. So you do need a support structure around you that allows for really it is a bit of a selfish endeavor, even though if it works out then it's tremendous for your family, for your future, and it is most definitely a very rewarding journey to go on. But and actually I believe also that it requires blind optimism, and sometimes not knowing what's ahead of you is a good thing. But for all those that are listening to this or that are watching this, that are considering their own taking that first step, then I couldn't recommend it more. It's a tough journey, but it really does teach, and it really does teach, and You know, I don't think there's no course or books or anything that you can do that basically can teach you the lessons that going through it yourself teaches. So that's it. So, I mean, what I noticed today is there's some really, really good people around this conference. One of those being my former manager when I worked at North, Eamon Walsh. You know, he reached out to me. I'm really thankful that he did. I really, really enjoyed being here, being back in Galway, where, you know, maybe it's a little bit of an ego thing, but it's nice to be back. It's nice to, in your own town, it's nice to be recognised for your achievements, and it's really nice to be back to meet my family for a few days. So, so for those reasons, you know, I think for those reasons, I'm thankful to the likes of Eamon and those guys that are around us for asking me to be here. In terms of how it was run, I thought it was very professional. I thought the location was really great. I thought the speakers, the theme was, you know, software, and I thought the speakers were just fantastic. They were humorous, they were funny on a topic that tends not to be. So overall, I think it was I think everyone should be really proud of what they achieved here today. 200 people, pretty full auditorium the entire day, very engaged group of people, very good speakers. Yeah, I think it was a success, and it should be seen as a success, and it should be seen as something that, you know, I think that if I was to say one thing, it would be you're probably going to need a bigger area next week or next year, because I think the word will spread on this one. It was well managed, well run, and, you know, start it earlier the next time and get a bigger location, because I think that's what it'll require.
Yeah, so here at GMIT today we had the first of hopefully an annual AtlanTec 15 Software Development Conference. We were delighted to host it here at GMIT. GMIT, we've been teaching software development for about 40 years now, since 1975, which started out as higher diplomas and certificates in software development. For the past 20 years, honours degrees in software development, and over the past few years, higher diploma in software development as part of the government Springboard program to try to get people back to work who are not necessarily software engineers but have a flair for IT. The AtlanTec conference started out as an idea of ITAG, the Information Technology Association of Galway, ourselves, GMIT, and some engineers, software engineers from Cisco and Avaya and Storm Technology here in Galway, both as a recognition and a celebration of the West of Ireland's capability for software and software development and the amount of people involved in software in the region. We really wanted to reflect that. And I suppose the culmination of all that planning was the event today, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Very well attended with over 200 delegates at the conference, and some superb world-class speakers. We started out in the morning with Kevlin Henny talking about the art, you know, the craft of software development. We had Dave Farley, Giovanni Asproni, John Jagger. And in the afternoon, some local guys, local talent, Brian Doody and John from Cisco, and culminating with our own Corafins, John Maguire, with his game golf and a fantastic story of entrepreneurship in a software area. So delighted that the conference went well. Delighted to host it here at GMIT. I think it went very well. The feedback's been great, and we're looking forward to next year. I think the feedback on the floor to hear the engagement with the audience at the break time and at lunchtime with each other and with the speakers was just fantastic. So I think we're onto something here. I'd like to think we need to create that buzz. You know, we have our Silicon Valley, we have Silicon Glen in Scotland, maybe now it's Silicon Bay right here in Galway. So let's keep it going, let's keep the momentum going, and looking forward to an even better conference next year.